Before moving to the United States, I lived in Utrecht, the Netherlands, but my mom originally comes from Helmond in the province of North Brabant. So we would often take a train ride there to visit my grandparents. That train ride took us to the beautiful city of s-Hertogenbosch, or Den Bosch, known for the St. Jan's Cathedral or the Hieronymus Bosch Art Museum and many other beautiful places to visit. To me, however, Den Bosch is synonymous with a century-old pastry, the Bossche Bollen. Growing up, I would be on the train going to my grandparents, begging my parents if we could get off the train in Den Bosch so we could eat a Bossche Bollen at Jan de Groot, which was right across the street from the station. And every so often I got lucky and we did just that. Today we'll be making Bossche Bollen. Hi, I'm Toine and welcome to my kitchen. If you're new to this channel, I focus on cooking foods from my home country, the Netherlands, and some of its former colonies such as Indonesia. As I was researching the history of the Bossche Bollen, it became clear there is no hard proof by whom or where the Bossche Bollen was invented. Some stories say Den Haag, others say Den Bosch. But even in Den Bosch there are several bakeries claiming that they were the first to make a choux pastry, a puff, filled with whipped cream and covered in chocolate. However, nowadays, if you ask a real Bossenaar, someone who was born and raised in Den Bosch, where to get the one and only real Bossche Bollen, they will say Bakkerij Jan de Groot. The Bossche Bollen recipe consists of 3 different components: the batter, the glaze, and the filling. For the batter, you will need 75 grams of water, 75 grams of milk, 85 grams of all-purpose flour, 155 grams of eggs. This is approximately 3 large eggs, but you do have to weigh it out. 70 grams of butter and 2.5 grams of salt. To make the glaze, you will need 315 grams of sugar, 157 grams of semi-sweet chocolate, and 100 grams of water. To make the filling, you will need 1 liter of heavy whipping cream, 120 grams of powdered sugar, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla paste. I'm sure you've heard the term mise en place, have everything in place. And that's what I have here for making this choux batter that we use to make Bossche Bollen with. I have the oven preheating at 200 degrees Celsius or 390 degrees Fahrenheit. I have a heavy bottomed pan on my cooktop ready to go. My ingredients are here. I have a mixing bowl, my piping bag with an A1 tip in it inside of a cup. I have thermometer, mixer, and some spatulas, so I should be good to get going. All right, first thing we're going to do is turn on the stove. That's probably a good idea. Going to turn it to a medium-high. We're going to add the water, the milk, the butter, and the salt. You don't have to stir this continually, but you want to make sure that the butter melts before the liquid comes to a boil. So I find that stirring helps that out a little bit. As you can see, all my butter is melted before the milk and the water came to a boil, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for this mixture to come to a rolling boil. Our liquid is boiling. I'm going to turn this off, take it off the heat, and sift in my flour. I don't like to, in this pan anyway, I don't like to shake the sieve because then flour ends up on the sides of the pot and that will just make it more difficult to incorporate. So here's a little spoon and make sure it all falls out the center of the sieve. And this way, if there's any little lumps, the spoon helps to break them apart so that you get every speck of flour in your liquid here. Okay. I'm now going to stir that until it is completely combined. The saying was it needed to look like clay. That is the kind of original description for this. Zeeuwse klei to be specific. I have no idea what Zeeuwse klei looks like, but you want to make sure that you get all the flour incorporated into the water, milk, and butter mixture. I think I have that. So now I'm going to turn the stove or the cooktop back on, medium heat, and we're going to continually stir this while I'm bringing it to a temperature of 70 degrees Celsius, about 160 degrees Fahrenheit, which is why I have my thermopan ready. Another way that you can see that it's getting close to that is there will be a little bit of a film of the batter on the bottom of the pan. Let's see where we are temperature-wise. We're well over 160, so that is good. And you can see there's a little bit of a film, so I can turn this off. I'm now going to put it in the glass bowl. Let this cool off to about 50 degrees Celsius or 120 degrees Fahrenheit before adding the eggs. Otherwise, the eggs are going to cook when you add them. I've been stirring the batter to kind of speed up the cooling off process. So let's take a look at where we're at. You want it to be below 50 or 120, and right now I'm at 122, just a little longer. Let's take the temperature. 119. Okay. Transfer this into my mixing bowl, and now I'm going to use the mixer to mix the eggs through. So like I said, these are about 3 eggs. It's 2 whole eggs and probably about 3/4 of one of the eggs. But again, we're doing it by weight. First egg goes in. And you want to make sure it is fully incorporated before you add the other eggs. Next egg goes in. The consistency that you're looking for is a smooth batter that is not so liquid that it just pours off, but also not so stiff that it either doesn't fall off at all or falls off in big clumps. Okay, so we're not there yet. I'm going to add the rest of the egg. And then we will see if the consistency is what we want it to be. If not, we're not going to add more eggs. We're going to add a little bit of milk if we need it. And we'll find that out soon. So there is no yeast or baking powder or any other leavening agent in here. So all of the lift comes from the eggs as well as the water evaporating, creating steam that makes that pocket on the inside. Okay, there are no more lumps. And it slowly droops off. I'm going to add just a splash of milk. A splash. It doesn't need a lot. So let me get the milk. Just a little bit. I'm going to mix it through. That wasn't even a teaspoon of milk. Just enough to make this just a little bit more liquid. But again, not so liquid that it just pours off like this. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Now I have my piping bag with an A1 tip, and I'm using this cup, and I'm going to fold the top over. Okay, we're going to scoop this into the piping bag. Try not to make a mess. I often fail at that mission, but it's nice to have the cup because it allows me to use one hand for the spatula and the other for holding the bowl, and I don't have to worry about the piping bag like flopping over and making a big mess. So, okay, almost there. For the last little bit, I'll have to be very careful to get it in here. Okay. Other than my hands being messy, I think I did pretty good. 1 minute, I'm going to clean my hands off and then we're going to keep going. I hope you're enjoying this video. If you are, please click the like and subscribe button. It will really help our channel. And if you want YouTube to notify you whenever we post a new video, click the bell. I have a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper, and we're going to pipe these kind of dollops of this batter on here. Try to make them the same size. They will spread when they're baking, so you want to give them enough room. Mine are not going to be perfectly round, I can already tell that, but that's okay. They should make somewhere between 8 and 10. I have a little bowl of water. I'm going to wet my finger and push down those little peaks at the top because they will burn and we don't want that, okay? And now we're going to put them in the oven. We're going to bake these for 30 minutes or until they're nice and golden brown. It's been 30 minutes and I've taken the cookie sheet out of the oven. What I'm going to do is very carefully, these are hot, turn them around and poke a little hole in the bottom, just like that. I've turned the oven off already, and what I'm going to do in a minute, when I'm done poking holes, is I'm going to put this cookie sheet in the oven that's turned off with the door closed for maybe 5 minutes. I'm going to open the door partially. And what we're doing there is drying out the inside of these profiteroles. I don't know what to call them until they're Bossche Bollen. These puff kind of unevenly, but they're still going to taste great. So I'm going to put these in the oven with the little ventilation holes pointing up for 5 minutes with the door closed. Then I'm going to open the door and let it sit there for another 20 minutes. So my choux pastries were in the oven off with the door closed for 5 minutes and then with the door open for 20 minutes. And they've been cooling. They're completely cool right now. So it's time to make the glaze. They're not perfect. I just noticed that a couple of them have like little holes on the side, which probably is the reason why they didn't poof as much. But once you cover them with chocolate and you fill them with whipping cream, it's going to taste absolutely great. So first thing we're going to do is add the water to the pan. I also have a little brush with some water to the side. I'm going to use that to water down the sides of the pan to make sure there are no sugar crystals on it. Sugar goes in next. Gently stir it. Make sure kind of get the crystals away from the walls. And now I'm going to turn on the stove. Again, you don't have to constantly stir. I'm just doing it to make sure there's no sugar sticking out from the water. And we're going to bring this to a boil. Once it boils, we're going to let it boil for a minute and then take it off the heat to add the chocolate. I'm seeing some sugar crystals on the side, so I'm just brushing them down with some water. I start seeing little bubbles forming, so I'm going to very gently stir it to make sure all the sugar is dissolved. Now we wait for it to boil. Some people use a ganache when they make their own Bossche Bollen, but that is not the traditional way. It's one of the few parts of the recipe I was able to find online when I first started making these, that it isn't a ganache, but rather a chocolate glaze. It is now boiling. We're going to let this go for 1 minute. It's been a minute. I'm going to turn this off and pour this in a glass bowl, really hot. Careful. Going to move this to the side. And now I am adding my chocolate and I'm going to stir it carefully. And the goal is to turn this into a glaze. It's okay if it doesn't look like it's all incorporated. Once most of it is melted through, I'm actually going to use my immersion blender to finalize it, if you will. This is fantastic. Smells so good. I've seen some recipes where people also add cocoa powder. It adds a little bit more of a darker color to the glaze, but I have found over time that I like it with just the chocolate. You can also do this with milk chocolate if you don't like darker chocolate, but traditionally it is done with dark chocolate or semi-sweet chocolate. I think it's very well combined. So I'm going to put the spatula in here. I'm going to put my immersion blender in and just do this for about a minute. What you should see is it should get really smooth and much more glossy. You can tell it that it is indeed getting more glossy, so that is great. Okay. I think it's very glossy. Look at that, that looks great. You want to wait with glazing them until this reaches 60 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And right now it is 148. We have a little bit to go. You may be tempted to put this in a bigger bowl. However, if you use too big a bowl, the layer of, or the depth of the mixture is going to be too shallow and you won't be able to cover the entire Bossche Boll. It's time to get our hands dirty and dip the pastries. So we're going to hold on by the edge as much as possible, dip it in here, and then take it out, wait for it to drip off, and then put it here. If you don't want to make a mess on your counter, put some parchment paper underneath there. Okay, back on the rack. Give it a good stir, and then we're ready for some more dipping. Some people will use a spoon to drizzle the glaze on top, but then you don't get the real Bossche Boll where the chocolate goes until really far down the sides. So this is the traditional way of doing it, even if it is a little bit messy. The last one. We are going to let these cool completely before we start to fill them with the whipped cream. Our unfilled Bossche Bollen have completely cooled down, and the glaze has set where you no longer leave fingerprints on it when you touch them. And we need that because we're going to fill it by holding it in our hand with the chocolate side down. Now it's time to make whipped cream. Adding the whipping cream to a bowl, powdered sugar, and the vanilla paste. You can use vanilla beans as well if you'd like, or vanilla extract. I'm going to start slow so I'm not wearing the powdered sugar. The goal is to get this to stiff peaks. You don't want to over whip your whipping cream or your heavy cream because that will turn it into butter. So you do have to be kind of careful when to stop. We're going to do the dangerous part, trying to get all the whipped cream off the beaters. Oh, don't do that. We're really cooking here. So I have my piping bag here with an S1 tip. This is not a huge piping bag. There's no way all of this is going to fit in here. So I'm going to fill about halfway and then use it to put cream in one or maybe two of the Bossche Bollen and then refill my bag. You want to make sure you get the whipped cream down as far as you can so I can really twist the bag here. So now I'm going to grab my Bossche Boll and squeeze it, and you can feel it filling up. You can see it filling up. The bottom is starting to kind of poof up. I'm going to refill my piping bag, continue filling the Bossche Bollen, and I'll see you when I'm done. So my shapes were not as nicely round as they ought to be, which means they don't look like a traditional Bossche Boll, but I'm gonna have a bite anyway. So, Eet Smakelijk. Whipped cream, making it all the way. It's completely filled. Let me cut it in half so we can kind of see what it looks like. It is completely filled with whipped cream. A nice layer of that chocolate glaze on there. They're so good. There is that sweetness of the whipped cream, which really counterbalances the chocolate flavor of the glaze. Then there's the bite of the choux pastry around it. It's just a wonderful pastry to eat. It may seem messy, but if it is a fresh Bossche Boll, there is nothing happening with the glaze in your hands unless you keep your hands on there for a long time, which is why the true Bossenaren, people from Den Bosch, eat it from the bottom. They kind of start eating here because that is a good test on whether or not this is a verse Bossche Boll. I'm going to continue eating this with a cup of coffee in a little bit, but I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like and subscribe button and don't forget to share it with your friends. If you have any questions about the recipe or memories of eating Bossche Bollen, I would love it if you can leave them in the comments below. I will post the recipe with both imperial and metric measurements on my website, toineskitchen.com, and you can find me on social media. If you make this recipe, I would really enjoy it if you can post a photo on Instagram with the hashtag ToinesKitchen, and I will share it in my story and on my website. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.